A terrifying thought experiment. 10 signs we're edging closer to World War III. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're discussing a topic that keeps me up at night, the potential for a third world war. History has taught us that seemingly small sparks can ignite catastrophic fires. So, let's explore 10 alarming signs that suggest the world might be sleepwalking towards another major conflict. Rising tensions, a world on edge. Global relations are strained, hinting at a potential World War III. The US, China, and Russia are in a geopolitical standoff. Trade disputes and territorial conflicts are escalating tensions. The climate of distrust is reminiscent of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Regional conflicts over resources and ideologies add fuel to the fire. The world stands on a fault line, with tensions grinding against each other. How long can we maintain this balance before it cracks wide open? Gearing up for Armageddon, the military spending spree. The alarming rate at which countries are beefing up their militaries is our next red flag. The current state of global military spending is less responsible defense and more Black Friday at the warmongers' emporium. The US is leading the charge, pouring trillions into its already gargantuan military. China is rapidly modernizing its armed forces, and Russia is also pumping money into its military. Countries around the world are boosting their military capabilities, citing concerns about regional instability. This obsession with military might is like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more countries invest in weapons, the less secure they feel, leading to a vicious cycle of escalation. It's the classic security dilemma. Everyone wants to be safe, but their actions make everyone else feel threatened. The technological terror weapons of the future here today. The rapid pace of technological advancement in weaponry is truly terrifying. We've entered the age of science fiction warfare, where the lines between man and machine are blurring. Autonomous weapon systems or killer robots can identify, track, and eliminate targets without human intervention. Hypersonic missiles travel at 5 times the speed of sound, making them virtually impossible to defend against. Cyber warfare can cripple entire nations without firing a single shot. The modernization of existing nuclear arsenals and the potential for new actors to acquire these weapons adds to the sense of existential dread. We're developing weapons of unimaginable destructive power without fully grasping the ethical implications or long-term consequences. It's like giving a toddler a loaded gun and hoping for the best. Let's delve deeper into the murky world of cyber warfare. Traditional warfare, as horrific as it is relatively straightforward. Cyber warfare, on the other hand, is a shadowy realm of espionage, sabotage, and disinformation. State-sponsored hackers infiltrate critical infrastructure, shut down power grids, and disrupt financial markets. It's the kind of insidious warfare that can bring a nation to its knees without a single shot being fired. The problem is, it's incredibly difficult to prove who's behind these attacks. This lack of accountability creates a dangerous environment where nations can strike at their rivals with impunity. It's a constant game of cat and mouse, a slow-burning fuse that could easily escalate into a full-blown conflict. It's the digital equivalent of a Cold War standoff, where the threat of mutually assured destruction looms large. Let's talk about a term that should send chills down your spine: proxy wars. These are conflicts where major powers support opposing sides in smaller, often regional conflicts. Proxy wars might seem like a neat way to contain conflict, but they're incredibly dangerous and have a nasty habit of spiraling out of control. Take, for instance, the ongoing conflicts in Syria, Yemen, and Ukraine. Major powers like the US, Russia, Iran, and Saudi Arabia are backing different sides, providing weapons, funding, and training. Miscalculations, miscommunications, and outright aggression can quickly escalate the situation. It's like playing a high-stakes game of chess with live ammunition. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and suddenly you're not just sacrificing pawns, you're risking a full-blown war. Let's add another layer of complexity: resource scarcity. As the global population grows and the effects of climate change become more apparent, Competition for essential resources like water, food, and energy will intensify. We're already seeing the early stages of this resource scramble in various parts of the world. Disputes over water rights are becoming increasingly common, particularly in regions facing severe drought. Competition for arable land is driving farmers into conflict with each other and with expanding urban centers. The race to secure access to dwindling fossil fuel reserves is fueling geopolitical tensions in energy-rich regions. Imagine these localized conflicts playing out against a backdrop of rising sea levels, extreme weather events, and mass displacement of populations. The stakes become much higher, and the potential for conflict becomes exponentially greater. Let's talk about economics. Economic instability can drive conflict. When economies tank, unemployment soars, and people struggle to put food on the table. This creates fertile ground for extremist ideologies and nationalist sentiment. The Great Depression contributed to the rise of fascism in Europe. The 2008 financial crisis fueled political polarization and social unrest. Governments might resort to scapegoating and military adventurism. This nationalist posturing could create a tinderbox environment. Let's address the elephant in the room: nuclear weapons. Despite decades of arms control efforts, the threat of nuclear war is still very much alive and well. The so-called nuclear club is no longer quite so exclusive. More and more countries are developing or acquiring nuclear capabilities. This proliferation of nuclear weapons increases the likelihood that these weapons will actually be used. It makes it much more difficult to maintain global stability and prevent nuclear conflict. With more players in the game, the risk of miscommunication, misperception, and escalation increases exponentially. The more countries that possess nuclear weapons, the greater the risk that these weapons could fall into the wrong hands. Let's talk about the rise of nationalism and populism. Pride in one's country is natural, but when exploited, it threatens global peace. Global challenges need cooperation. Yet, nationalist leaders push isolationism. They scapegoat outsiders and offer simple solutions. This weakens international trust and institutions. It fosters an us versus them mentality. Let's talk about the glue that's supposed to hold this whole shaky edifice together. International institutions. Organizations like the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, and the International Criminal Court were created to prevent future conflicts, promote cooperation, and uphold international law. These institutions, while far from perfect, have played a vital role in maintaining global stability. They've provided a forum for dialogue, helped resolve disputes peacefully, and promoted economic interdependence. However, these institutions are now under threat, facing challenges that undermine their legitimacy and effectiveness. Nationalist leaders have shown a willingness to disregard international norms and weaken these institutions from within. These institutions are often hampered by bureaucracy, inefficiency, and a lack of enforcement mechanisms. Without strong, respected institutions to mediate disputes and enforce agreements, the world becomes a far more dangerous and unpredictable place. So, there you have it. 10 alarming signs that the world might be sleepwalking its way towards another global conflict. It's a lot to process, and it's certainly not the most uplifting way to spend an evening. But here's the thing. While these trends are deeply concerning, it's important to remember that the future is not predetermined. We have the power to choose a different path, one that leads away from the abyss of conflict and towards a future where cooperation, diplomacy, and mutual understanding prevail. It's going to take a concerted effort from individuals, governments, and international institutions to address the root causes of conflict and promote sustainable development. The alternative, a world consumed by conflict, violence, and destruction, is simply too horrific to contemplate.